Burkina Faso has been landing blows upon blows on France, but it was time these blows went in another direction. In the most recent turn of events, Burkina Faso has suspended the BBC and Voice of America radio stations for their coverage of a report by Human Rights Watch on a mass killing of civilians carried out by the country's armed forces. Tonssira Myrian Corine Sanou, the spokesman for Burkina Faso's communications, announced late on Thursday that the two radio stations will be shut down for 2 weeks. She also cautioned other media outlets against covering the topic. Human Rights Watch said on Thursday that the army had terminated over 223 people in areas where there were allegations of collaboration with militants, 56 of whom were minors. International media outlets, such as the Associated Press, covered the story extensively. However, the Voice of America said it stands by its reporting about Burkina Faso and intends to continue to fully and fairly cover activities in the country. They have asked the government of Burkina Faso to reconsider this troubling decision. If the Voice of America continues to report on news about Burkina Faso, it will likely face further suspension or restrictions from the Burkinabe authorities. The suspension reduces the BBC ability to reach audiences with independent and accurate news, but they have said they will continue to report on the region in the public interest and without fear or favor. The authorities have also ordered internet service providers to suspend access to the websites and digital platforms of Voice of America and BBC within Burkina Faso. This suspension is not an isolated incident, as Burkinabe authorities have previously suspended French TV outlets and radio stations and expelled correspondents from French newspapers. Military-ruled Burkina Faso has in recent months suspended other Western news outlets, including the French television broadcasters LCI and France 24, French radio broadcaster Radio France Internationale, the French daily newspaper Le Monde, and the French magazine Jeune Afrique. The transitional government of Burkina Faso suspended all distribution of media associated with French news outlet Jeune Afrique in the country as of September 25th of last year. This suspension followed a previous article on the same website in which Jeune Afrique alleged that discontent was growing in Burkina Faso barracks. This decision to suspend Jeune Afrique distribution in Burkina Faso came nearly a year after Captain Ibrahim Traore assumed power, amid growing anti-French sentiments in the region. All this has brought up discussions on social media platforms. Some people believe that Burkina Faso's journalists shouldn't have to deal with government censorship in addition to the difficulties of covering the nation's insecurity. The director of the Reporters Without Borders Sub-Saharan Africa Bureau, Sadibou Marong, said the suspensions were another blow to press freedom in Burkina Faso. In the past, the West African country was praised for being a regional leader in press freedom. Now, some people believe it's not the case. Others are in support of this suspension. They believe some of these news outlets go beyond what they ought to report. Note that the Voice of America reported in one of their news outlets that this suspension comes ahead of World Press Freedom Day on May 3. Hope you understand what they mean by this. All this is happening at a time when Burkina Faso's military leaders have expelled 3 French diplomats, accusing them of subversive activities. The expulsions are the latest sign of the two nations' deteriorating relations. Burkina Faso's tight connections to the previous colonial power, France, have ended as a result of his tilt towards Russia. In response, France stated that Burkina Faso had no legitimate grounds to expel 3 of its diplomats. The 3 people, 2 of whom were identified as political advisors, were given 48 hours to leave the country. The specifics of the accusations made against them were left out. The French government took note of the legal proceedings, but rejected accusations that these technicians were sent to Burkina Faso for reasons other than their computer maintenance work. The French Consulate General requested their return to France without delay. International human rights organizations have criticized Burkina Faso's military leaders for suppressing free expression and intimidating opponents while it tries to handle a security crisis brought on by terrorists associated with the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. News outlets believe that newsmakers' misleading comments are newsworthy, which justifies their publication of them. It's a similar defense to social media companies' use of free speech to justify maintaining the veracity of misleading claims. Arguments like these disregard how our minds function. Whether a claim is genuine or not, we often accept it because it fits with our preconceived notions. And when we come across such assertions, we often exaggerate them, remember them, and spread them to other people. The idea that social media companies can fully regulate their domain overlooks a number of factors, including the size of that domain, the blurred boundary between reality and fiction, the importance of unrestricted free speech in a democracy, the high rate of algorithmic model errors, and more. Furthermore, news organizations are not set up to act as an impenetrable barrier to disseminating false information. News organizations serve as gatekeepers, but they are not in a position to enforce morality. Should they attempt, accusations of bias in the media would intensify and public confidence in the media would drastically decline. A little fact-checking won't make up for sloppy journalism. There is no proof to support the claim that fact-checking by news organizations significantly reduces the spread of false information. The misinformed rarely fact-check their beliefs, and when they do, are seldom persuaded that they're wrong. Reducing their contribution is the only way for news organizations to combat misinformation effectively. The move towards social media as a source of news has also allowed misinformation to flourish. A social media account allows anyone to start their own news source. Getting noticed by as many people as possible is nearly always the aim for persons and media outlets that post news. Not precisely even-keeled and thoroughly researched stories are what trend on social media. Virality is largely dependent on outrage for posts on major sites. Out-of-context details distort what's real, and thanks to the share button, mistaken impressions can run through a large network of people virtually instantly. This is what Ibrahim Traore is trying to prevent. Fake news can spread on social media up to 10 times more quickly than accurate reporting. When explosive, misinforming posts go viral, their corrections are never as widely viewed or believed. The shocking fact that grabs listeners' attention is more compelling, memorable, and louder than a follow-up correction. The interesting story prevails when it comes to the race between the false but interesting and the true but boring. Social media content is curated by an algorithm that determines what we view. Keeping you online for as long as possible is the algorithm's responsibility. The more time you spend on the network, the more customized advertisements that are aimed directly at you. All of the main platforms operate on this business model. In order to keep you on longer, the algorithm decides what to display you next based on information about you, including the kinds of material you have liked and shared in the past, and the content creators whose stuff you are most likely to interact with. You'll see more posts similar to the ones you like and share. So, you see why Traore had to suspend these news outlets. However, concerns over the freedom of the press and information in Burkina Faso are raised by the suspension of Voice of America and the BBC. Even while the government contends that the suspension is required to preserve national security, upholding the ideals of free speech and the public's right to balanced news is vital. In a time when knowledge is critical for forming public opinion and keeping the powerful accountable, governments must create an atmosphere that promotes free speech and information sharing. The Burkinabe leaders can take several measures to ensure that news outlets in Burkina Faso exercise more caution. The government should review and reform media regulations to ensure they are fair, transparent, and in line with international standards. The Superior Council for Communication, which regulates media operations, should act independently and provide advance notice for its decisions. All final decisions should be subject to appeal before competent courts. Traore should ensure that all media outlets, whether national or foreign, are treated equally and enjoy the same rights and protections regarding freedom of the press. Discriminatory actions against specific foreign media outlets, such as the recent suspensions of French media channels, should be avoided. Burkina Faso should take steps to protect journalists from violence and threats. Violence against journalists, whether from armed groups or the authorities, has increased in recent years. Leaders should condemn such acts and ensure that those responsible are held accountable. These media outlets too should try as much as possible to verify their facts before sharing vital information about the country. Only then shall we have some calm on this uprising case in Burkina Faso. Do you think Traore is being too strict on these media outlets? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Do not forget to like this channel and subscribe to the new tourist channel. Turn on notifications too so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.